Podcasting is more than just talking. It's listening. BSing with Bob Schmidt.
The BS with Bob Schmidt podcast featuring entrepreneurs, business people, and marketers. This week we're talking with speaker, entrepreneur, and author, Kat Chrysostom. Kat, thanks a lot for joining us. I wanted to talk to you after meeting you a couple of months ago because I was intrigued by your story on how you had a near-fatal accident and you kind of turned that into a whole new brand and a whole new lifestyle for yourself.
Yes, absolutely. Bob, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be talking with you.
So let's talk about that story. So let's talk about your near-fatal accident that kind of gave you a whole new perspective on life.
So I grew up on a farm in a family full of medical professionals. My father was a dentist. My mom was a nurse. My uncle was a pharmacist. And just a lot of different doctors in the extended family as well. So sort of, you could say, destined for the medical field. I was actually studying pre-med in school. I had gone to college on a full scholarship and was, just thought I had everything figured out, essentially. Was really enjoying my studies, was doing a lot of different internships in the medical field, sort of had figured out where I wanted to focus. And on my third year in school in 2011 was spring break, and I had decided to go on a vacation down to Florida and take the opportunity to ride horses, which I'd always been passionate about horses. I've ridden since I was a little girl, and was riding a horse actually back to the barn after a beautiful ride on a gorgeous sunny Florida day. And we were crossing a bridge over it was an embankment over a really large drop for drainage, and the horse stumbled. And unlike most stumbles, he didn't catch himself, and we actually tumbled almost 15 feet down off of this embankment into the drop of drainage, and it resulted in both of us actually fracturing our necks. I was paralyzed, and the horse weeks later didn't make it. Was told that he was dying, and it was just really a terrible accident that changed the trajectory of my whole life right in that moment.
Well, when I met you, you were walking and you look like you're moving around pretty well, so I'm assuming that you probably did a lot of rehab in order to get back to fighting shape, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I was in intense rehabilitation for 18 months post-accident, but that continued almost 3 years post-accident, physically and mentally. What that kind of trauma does to your psyche is a whole nother, we could do a whole nother episode just on that. And that took, a tremendous amount of time to get over. But yes, so I was paralyzed, for the first few days, pretty much completely. And from then on, I was in and out of temporary paralysis, which was probably the scariest part of the entire accident for me, because it was this fear of the unknown. Like, am I going to wake up? Am I going to, be able to move partially or not at all? So it was just this constant fear of what was my life was going to turn into. And during that time, and I think this was one of the hardest things mentally for me, I lost my scholarship. I had a dog at the time. I lost my dog. I wasn't, I was told I would never ride horses again. I was put into a halo traction device, which I don't know if you're familiar with that or the listeners are, but so I kind of jokingly say it somewhat resembles a medieval torture device, but it is a carbon fiber, sheepskin lined vest that stays on you. It's tightly secured to your torso area, and then each side has 2 rods, so there's 4 total, 2 in the front and 2 in the back, 4 metal rods that have screws on each one that are screwed onto your skull, and it basically holds your head off of your spine so that you have ability that, yes.
I've seen
so
those.
Like
I've seen people in those before. Wow. And you had that. Yes. How long did you have to wear that?
I was just over 3 months. Was in that for just over 3 months. So
wow.
I was in complete traction during that time. And then I was put into a hard neck collar, which I ended up staying in for almost a full year thereafter. after having the halo removed. And so it was just, it was a time where I had said I lost my scholarship and, I lost a lot of friends. Like, life moves on for pretty much everyone else. And for me, I felt like I was sitting in, a hospital bed, and life was moving on for everyone except for me. And I just felt like I was being, really left behind. And it was a very hard thing because I really had lost my identity, what I wanted to do. And so it was this opportunity, this unique opportunity to reinvent myself. And I wish I could, say now that, like I laid in that bed and thought about it. And that's not at all the truth. It was just like searching for opportunities, one foot in front of the other. And eventually, I was able to reinvent myself and use my accident as a springboard to develop my business.
That's honestly, that's amazing, because I think a lot of the trauma and a lot of the things that you had going through with your accident are probably a lot of the things that people quote feel, obviously not really feel, but they when they're back up against the wall starting a business, they're feeling like like they can't do anything, and they feel like maybe the screws are getting a little tighter on things, and and they're trying to make things happen. So you physically had that happen, and then you mentally had that happen when you're starting your own business, and now things are going good for you?
Yeah, things are really great. I mean, physically, I am pretty much fully mobile. I have limited mobility as far as my neck is concerned, but beyond that, and some very small, lingering amounts of pain, I'm, completely rehabbed, and have, mentally, I think at this point, it's so neat to be able to look back and be able to tell my story and tell people who, have either been through something physically, but also, like you said, mentally, a lot of people feel that way, like they are paralyzed or they're stuck in a position and they can't move forward. And it's really been, the business was something that I developed without ever telling my story. It was something that, I got into, so that people understand what I do. I had actually experienced something called far infrared light therapy in my rehabilitation. And that is the therapy that gave me not only my mobility back, but really my life back. So I wanted to be able to take that same therapy and apply it to the creatures that I loved, with horses and to dogs, and then also for people. So I developed a product that utilized that therapy and began selling it. And I never told my story, which is really interesting, because the first 2 or 3 years, I was just selling the product. And one day I was at a trade show and somebody asked me, "How did you get into this?" And I shared my story, and she immediately got emotional and started sharing her husband had gotten into a bad car accident and had been paralyzed. And she gave me this huge hug, and we were both crying, and it was just such an emotional experience. And I thought, when she left, we had exchanged information, and I thought, maybe I should share that story more often, because it was just such an amazing, thing that it did for her. And she had emailed me to follow up and just said, it helped me so much. Like, it gave us so much hope. And her husband ended up reaching out. It was just a really neat thing. So really, I never intended to share it, but since I have started sharing the story, it's been really incredible, that the hope that it's given to other people who feel like they're in those same situations.
The weird thing is, so I don't know if I shared with you when I met you that I had a horse kick me when I was, I don't know, I was in high school. I was in high school or middle school, I was a much younger man, and I have been afraid of horses ever since then. I couldn't imagine tumbling and getting back on the horse and then actually doing a business. Doing a business was something that, that drastically changed your life,
Yeah.
I mean, it's all about perseverance and getting back up and pushing through things that are tough for you, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, my favorite, I think, quote of all time is what Winston Churchill said, when you're going through hell, just keep going. And that is so true. It's one foot in front of the other. And continue searching for opportunities. And, the biggest thing is that when you're staying stagnant, and for me, when I was physically paralyzed, if you're not pushing yourself to move, you'll never move. If you're not pushing yourself to search for other opportunities, you're never going to find them. And I think that that's the biggest thing is, some people say take massive action every day. And I sort of disagree with that. If you're taking some action, no matter whatever action it is, no matter how small it is, as long as it's getting you a little bit outside of your comfort zone and you're pushing forward, your life is going to be moving in the right direction. And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. Just keep going, get back up, and keep moving forward.
Did you ever have the poor, pitiful me moment where he's like, why the hell did this happen to me and not somebody else?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. So I actually remember the moment that sort of resentment started. I had been transferred back home. I was in the hospital for a few weeks, actually, when the accident occurred. And my parents were kind enough to bring me back to their home, and I was actually in the bed there, and some dear friends from college had come down to visit me, and one of them came to the bed. And when you have a really severe trauma like that, it's like everything hurts. Your skin hurts. To blink felt like it hurt. I mean, everything was hurting. And she rubbed my arm, and I remember kind of grunting like, that really hurt. And she leaned down and she said, I'm so sorry that this happened to you, but remember, everything happens for a reason. And she left, and I wanted to just scream, but I was very heavily sedated because I wanted to say, that's really easy for you to say because you're walking out of here. Like, what do you mean everything happens for a reason? And that really was kind of the onset of this almost resentment, like, why did this happen to me? And that was really hard moving forward from then. But what I began to realize is once I started to set very small attainable goals for myself, and it's been the same thing in my business, once I would reach that, I would push myself a little further. And that was really what kept me going and kept me not resentful, because it kept me so focused on, my own well-being and what was happening in my life and accomplishing those goals. And I really felt like that was that was sort of the mental shift that I made. And since then, it's been incredible what has happened in my own life. My physical comeback, but also in the business.
Now, when you say the small attainable goals, is that like SMART goals? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I would say yes, absolutely. So breaking something down, it's very hard. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and I speak at some colleges and high schools. And what I found is that it's really hard when you're starting from zero. If you set a goal, to sell $5 million in revenue your first year, you're really setting yourself up for failure. Like, set smaller, attainable goals, break it down. If you get to that, fantastic. Most people are never going to get there in their first year. So yeah, exactly. Breaking it down, getting a small, a more attainable goal, and you can still have your big picture goal. But, for me, when I was first starting, I didn't even know what kind of goal to set, at all. But for me to just be able to say, okay, I want to, generate 5 new customers today, or 5 new customers for the entire week or whatever. And when you get there, it's like, okay, we met that, so I'm going to push myself a little further. Let's have 7 new customers this week, and, continue pushing yourself. I think that's a very good way to approach business, because otherwise you feel defeated.
Now, when your friend said to you many years ago about the things happen for a reason, do you now believe that things happen for a reason, or no?
Oh my goodness. That's such a good question. People have asked me that. I feel like things happen. I don't necessarily know that things happen specifically for a reason, but I do believe that when things happen, you're placed into a unique position where you can create the outcome of whatever that occurrence was. So I don't know if that answers your question. I don't know that I feel like, for me, this could have really gone a different way. I could have sat back and, had that pitiful me attitude and that victim attitude and never have accomplished, my goals and not started my business. So I think it's really, I don't know that things necessarily happen for a reason, but I do think we are placed at a very unique opportunity or place where we can control the outcome.
So, Kat, did you develop the speaking in the book to help to sell your Benefab business, or did you start the business, the website business, and then because of that, you like talking to people and you liked writing? So, I mean, do they complement each other? Are they different? Are they working together in conjunction with each other?
So they definitely complement each other, I feel like. So I started the speaking as the brand founder and owner. So I was having just sort of randomly, I would have people that put on big equine shows or, shows like trade shows or arthritic conventions or something, that people would ask me to come share my story and to talk about the products. And so that's how it was sort of organically started as far as the speaking went. And at first, I was terrified to speak and joined Toastmasters, which is a public speaking group, and actually grew to really love it. And so that's how it was all sort of started. And then people in the crowd would, come up to me afterwards and say, you should really share this story, not necessarily know all about the products, but share just your story as a motivational or inspirational speech. And so it sort of has morphed into two different sections. So I speak as the brand owner and about the products, but then I also speak independently to high schoolers, like I said, colleges, also some different corporate events where I'm just speaking about the story, and then also building a brand and building a successful business. I'm really passionate about small business and being an advocate for small business owners and entrepreneurs. So I would say that those businesses definitely complement each other, but they are certainly independent.
That makes sense, but I was just wondering if one kind of fed to the other. So what do you enjoy doing the most? Like on a day off, what do you do?
Oh my gosh. So there's very seldom a total day off, but I would say, so within the business, my favorite, what I enjoy most certainly is giving back. So I love to hear from happy customers, and I just so enjoy hearing success stories of how the products have helped people or their animals. That's definitely what keeps me going on a day-to-day basis. That's always fun. And also in the speaking career, being able to see people have those aha, like light bulb moments. That's always definitely what I live for as a speaker in that realm. But I would say on a typical day off, if I can get out to the barn, that's sort of my peace and quiet. I do ride, even though I was told I would never ride again. I do have a horse. I ride totally recreationally for fun, have zero aspirations to ever do anything, shows or anything crazy. I don't jump any fences anymore. I used to be a show jumper. So I don't do any of that, but I do ride for fun, and that would probably, that's sort of my safe place. As ironic as that is, it was always my safe place growing up, and then it became my worst nightmare, my greatest fear, and it's sort of come full circle, and it's back to my safe place, my quiet place, and what I enjoy most.
What do you think you learned the most from going from being paralyzed to not?
I would say what I learned most is, I would want to say, and I do think that this is true, that I have learned to be grateful, to recognize what we do have, because at any moment you could lose it. That's certainly one of the top things, but I would say what I learned absolutely most is that yes, you can lose something at any moment, but what we have to remember is we control our outcome. And I think that would be my biggest takeaway. People can tell you that you'll never do something, or, for me, it was that I would never ride again and perhaps never walk again. And when I got into business, I remember actually talking to a well-seasoned entrepreneur who was much older and had been in, the textile industry for a long time. And he told me, you have no idea what you don't know, but you won't make it like this. And, talking to me about my products. And I thought, oh my gosh, I was so defeated that whole day, just thinking I couldn't get that out of my head. And what I've realized most is that we control our outcome. We don't have to believe what other people say. We can, as long as you believe what you want, I believe that what we speak things into reality. So I think that would be my absolute biggest takeaway, is that we are in control of our own life and we're in control of our outcome.
Weird question. Are you happy that things happened to you the way that they did, so that way you were able to obtain what you've got?
Yeah. So I think looking back, absolutely. There were a lot of moments that during this whole process that I have questioned why it happened to me. And, I certainly would not answer the way I'm answering now with yes. But yeah, I am. I feel like I don't know that happy would be the right word, but I'm definitely satisfied, and I feel very content with how things have played out. And it's taken years. This in March, it will have been 8 years. So
Wow.
We're just coming up on the 8-year mark. And, that's a long time, but it's taken a really long time to sort of go through this whole cycle and figure out, who Kat is, like what makes me tick? What do I want to do with my life? Is Benefab, what's going to feed myself and, be able to keep up with the lifestyle that, I want to live. And that's all been, these questions have been posed like multiple times in my own head. And I think that, for me, I had my life, quote unquote, figured out as a 20-year-old. I was looking at med schools to go to. I wanted to be a neonatologist. I was really passionate about the medical industry. So for me, by the time I was actually recovered, which was 18 months post-accident, was when I started to regain full mobility. I was like 21, looking around thinking, now what? It was really this whole reinvention of myself and my life. And I think that at this point, I can look back and say, I'm really content with where things, how things fell into place, or how I put the puzzle pieces in place. I shouldn't say fell into place, but yeah. So if that answers, that was a great question. I've never been asked that before.
Who should read the book Broken to Branded?
So I wrote the book to share my story very in its rawest form. It's really hard for me I talk about the story every time I speak from the stage, but it's very hard to go into the rawest details without becoming, extremely emotional for myself. So I wrote it because I felt like the story should be shared. And I also wrote it specifically for either entrepreneurs who want to build a business or people who want to find their purpose. So it's sort of a double-edged or double-sided coin, but I feel like anyone looking to find their purpose in life, build their career, kickstart a business, whatever it is, could really benefit, because it does all come down to we are in control of our outcome. And there's also a lot of just true business stories and real life strategies within that book. And I had expert contributors 5 different expert contributors write in about, marketing, copywriting. And so there's a lot of great things for small business owners in there, or entrepreneurs who are looking to get their business off the ground.
Kat, what are the 3 takeaways that we'll get from reading Broken to Branded, Surpass Your Fears, Find Your Purpose, and Take Control?
I think one of the 3 takeaways would be, certainly one is how to make a decision, how to avoid decision paralysis, for sure. The other is learning how to successfully network and using that network to build your dream, to build the life that you want. And thirdly would be to find your purpose. What makes you tick? What gets you excited? What life is going to make you want to get up in the morning? And that, that's really important, because so many of us sit here and, we live our lives, and then near the end of it, you look back and think, I wish I would have done X, Y, or Z. And, that's something that I want as many people to avoid as possible.
Your last name's kind of fitting for you because, you are pretty awesome. So, Kat Chrysostom, thank you very much for being on and sharing this fabulous story. I appreciate it. How do we find you? How do we find out more information about Kat and your book and your business and just all the stuff that we've talked about, Kat?
So I have 2 different websites. My personal website, so for any sort of speaking or my personal story and the book, can be found at catchrysostom.com, and I'll spell it. It is Kat with a K, K-A-T. The last name is CHRYSOSTOM.com. And then all of my products and more about the business, canine, equine, and human products, can be found at benefabproducts.com. That's Benefab stands for beneficial fabric.
The BS with Bob Schmidt podcast is brought to you by Orange Computer. Find them online at orangecomputerlax.com. And by Tri-State Sound and Light. Find them online at tristatesound.com. Tell your story with microcasts by podcastforhire.com. The BS with Bob Schmidt podcast is a Podcast for Hire production.